Okay, so there's an envelope in the middle of the table. If you open that, pass around the papers that are in it, everybody gets the same general instructions. I'm gonna walk us through this. So we're now going to do this Teflex products case. Well, the Teflex case was designed and is best used for executive training. It doesn't spell out a lot of stuff. It assumes people can just step in and take a role and understand how corporations function. What's the general counsel's role? What's the CEO's role? What is involved with corporate deal making? And it presumes a vague understanding of the pharmaceutical industry, but not a whole lot. But so it was designed to use with people who are fairly senior executives and who could step into these roles. And so I use it in the senior executive training program designed to teach people about dealing with what we call an angry public, meaning consumers or other stakeholders who are upset because a company's done something that's hurt them, or they think a company's about to do something that's going to hurt them, or they don't like what the company stands for. And either of those three circumstances lead to a company having to confront a group of folks who are angry with them. And most of the time, when that happens, a company sends out its public relations people and said, deal with those folks. And my feeling was it would be a lot more effective if a company had somebody it could send out who says, let's talk. Not, I'm going to put out press releases and spin the story and make the public on my side, make the public be on my side and not on the side of the complainers, but rather, well, let's treat this as a negotiation. How can the company deal with people who are upset and angry, sit down, create a forum, and work with them? And this game is designed to allow people to test in the course a framework that we teach called Dealing with an Angry Public, a mutual gains approach. I've taken a couple of hours to outline for them what the kind of traditional public relations strategy is and what the thinking behind that is, why I think that doesn't work so well, and the stories about why it doesn't work so well are outlined in my book by the title, Dealing with an Angry Public. And then I take a couple of hours, maybe an hour and a half, to describe to them this mutual gains approach to dealing with an angry public. And I go through the 6 principles that are at the core of this approach. And at that point I stop and I say, okay, I think you heard enough about this. Let's see what happens when you try it. And then they play Teflex as the first game trying to use what they've heard. Teflex produces specialized medical products using the recently patented Teflex. This is a compound that's special because its rate of degradation in the body can be precisely controlled. It's not degraded by stomach acid or intestinal enzymes, and it diffuses quickly into the bloodstream. And you can get a precise rate of degradation in the body by the way in which you formulate the compound. Teflex has a wide range of medical uses and may potentially revolutionize the administration of drugs. Many drugs could be mixed with raw Teflex and hardened to form tablets. And the tablets, but not the Teflex, would then dissolve in the intestine and be absorbed into the bloodstream at predictable rates. Because the degradation rate of Teflex is so precise, the entrance of drugs into the drug's bloodstream can be strictly controlled, and, very importantly, large doses could be administered at once but be released over a long period of time. 2 years ago, Midland Pharmaceutical Company struck a deal with Teflex. Midland's a large company that has successfully marketed numerous new drugs over the past decade. 2 years ago, it patented a drug called Renaid. Renaid will prevent or at least moderate damage to kidneys caused by high blood pressure. The drug has been tested in England and in the United States and was recently approved for use in both countries. Its major advantage over other drugs, its major advantages are that it is proven to be free of the serious side effects at normal doses that people were worried about, and it rarely causes discomfort for patients who take it. Also, studies have shown Renaid to be totally expelled from the body, leaving no residue whatsoever. Unfortunately, Renaid has two major drawbacks. It's degraded by the enzymes and acids in the stomach and therefore has to be injected. Secondly, the half-life, the length of time it takes for 1/2 the molecules of a material to degrade, of Renaid in the bloodstream is very short, only a few minutes. It must therefore be given in multiple daily doses through injections. Patients in the clinical trials have required up to 12 injections a day. In order for Renaid to become profitable, Midland had to find a way to modify it in two ways. It had to be orally administrable, and it had to degrade in the bloodstream in no less than 8 hours. So Midland invested almost $10 million in Renaid research by the time it realized that these modifications would be necessary. And therefore, it was willing to pay an additional $10 million over 5 years to Teflex Products for the right to use Teflex. Midland also agreed to purchase Teflex Enhanced Renaid tablets from Teflex Products on an as-needed basis. The best estimates available are that Midland will make more than $10 million in profits in the first year of Renaid production if the necessary modifications can be achieved. Potential users of Renaid have been pushing Midland to speed up production and marketing. Last March, Midland announced that the Teflex Enhanced drug would be available in, quote, about a year. As of today, 10 months later than promised, the drug is still not available. Last week, Midland issued a press release saying that it was as committed as ever to getting Renaid to market as quickly as possible. A recent industry newsletter contained a short blurb suggesting that Midland and Teflex Products were involved in some sort of behind-the-scenes squabble over money and patent rights. Several consumer groups have expressed outrage at the delays in bringing Renaid to market. The notion that these two companies would battle over how to split millions of dollars in profits while thousands of patients with high blood pressure and kidney disease suffer was too much for one doctor who brought the whole issue out in the open on a nationally syndicated talk show last week. In an unusual move, the National Science Institute, I made it up, a well-respected nonprofit scientific organization based in Washington, D.C., has invited 5 organizations to discuss the Renaid situation. So this neutral group is inviting 5 groups to come and talk. Those who have agreed to come include 3 representatives of consumer organizations with substantial expertise in medical and pharmacological issues, as well as representatives of Midland and Teflex. The president of Midland will attend, along with counsel, and the chief scientist from Teflex will attend. It's a game that you don't need a neutral to facilitate the conversation. It's simple enough that the parties, they may have a little bit of difficulty, but they can manage it without a neutral. The second game is more complex, and so I add a facilitator, a neutral, to help 6 parties deal with their differences. The third game, we introduce underlying value disputes, ethical issues, so many more complicated problems that make it hard to stay focused on applying a mutual gains approach when all of these value differences are looming large. So this is the least complex of the series of games designed to teach about this framework. Okay? So what's going to happen is we're going to now hand out confidential instructions so you know which of the 6 roles, there's 2 from Midland and there's 5 others, which of the 6 roles you'll be playing at your table. And my suggestion is just deal out these different colored sheets of paper as they come, and 3 of you will be consumers, and 1 of you will be the Midland president, and 1 will be the Midland CEO, and 1 will be the chief scientist for Teflex. I wish I had more empirical evidence to substantiate the answer I'm going to give you to the question. But this is more a hunch than it is something that I've documented. But I bet it could be documented, but I haven't done it. I do not think it makes a big difference which role people are assigned in terms of the learning that they get. Now, that depends on a couple of things being true. One, it depends on the 6 people randomly assigned being roughly equivalent in terms of their background, experience, and level of employment. So that's a big assumption. So that if people with very different levels of experience or different levels or rank within an organization were assigned the different roles, it would be harder for people to learn from the non-executive roles in the game. That is, there are 3 roles that are executive roles: the CEO, the president of Midland, the lawyer for Midland, and the chief scientist for Teflex. Those are 3. And then there are 3 consumer organizations, the sort of angry public. If the 3 executives were lower level staff people in an organization and the 3 consumer roles were played by very senior executives, there'd be a big problem with the learning being equal. But if everybody's sort of the same level, then I don't think it matters a lot who gets assigned which role. The consumer types are supposed to behave like consumer types, and they have confidential instructions urging them to press for what they want, not to worry about what the company wants, to be difficult, to be pushy, to not care about mutual gains. And the executive roles, you could play either way. You could play in a very positional bargaining fashion, or you could apply this new framework, a mutual gains framework. But in general, I'm happy randomly assigning roles in this particular workshop because people are at roughly the same level of background, skill, and in the hierarchy of their company. The second thing is that if they talk to each other after and say, well, in the role I was in, I thought this, I felt this, when you did this, it affected me this way. If they pool their experience, then I don't think it matters a lot. If nobody talks to anybody after, and I can't test with you what you were doing when you did this and how effective was I when I did that, then I think the people who are in the consumer roles will learn less than the people who are in the executive roles about using an angry public framework. But if they pool the knowledge, I don't think there would be any great disadvantage to being in one role. The reason we go to lunch immediately after we finish the game, but before the debriefing of the big group, is to allow people to go and continue talking about what happened on the scale of the table they were at. And what I'm going to do is you have to think for a minute about this. We're going to send you off to talk with the people who have the same role as you at another table, right? This is like meeting your alter ego in real life and getting to think out loud about what you're going to do before you do it. Now, so we're going to send everybody with one colored paper to a table where they're going to meet with people who have the same role, and they're going to give you about 15 minutes to think about how you're going to play this when you come back to the table you're at now where you're the only one in that role. So we're going to give you 15 minutes to prepare in same role meetings. And in a second, we'll have you move to the tables indicated on the screen up there, depending on the colored sheet of paper that you have. You don't have to reach agreement at this same role meeting. It's just a chance to think out loud with somebody who's got the same problem as you do coming up. I believe very strongly in same role preparation, not just for this crowd, but in any kind of gaming situation. If I'm going to have a half a dozen tables of 6, 36 people in the room playing this game, and each table of 6 is going to do the same thing, and I want to have some comparability across the tables for purposes of group evaluation at the end, the only way I'm going to get some comparability is to have the people who are going to play the same role at each different table talk a little bit beforehand about how they perceive the role. They don't have to agree on exactly how they're going to do it, but they need to have some shared understanding of the role they're going to be in. And so I encourage same role meetings, but very brief, and I make very clear, you don't have to reach any agreement, but these are people going to have the same problem you have when they go to their different table, and why don't you talk a little bit about what your strategy is? So if somebody's weak in terms of language, background, skills, because we have an international crowd and sometimes the language is an issue, they could sit with 5 other people and learn something in those 15, 20 minutes that helps them a lot. And so the rest of their table gets the benefit of that little bit of help that's given to the person who's weak in some respect because of the same role preparation. Secondly, it's a chance for people to do some preparation. If I didn't do that, I said, well, just sit by yourself and read your role. Someone would get off and go make a phone call. But if I say, you're in this with these other 5 people and talk about it, they're more likely to prepare. So it's a prep tool, it's a strengthening for the weak players tool, it's a generating comparability tool, and it only takes 15 or 20 minutes. Then you're going to come back to the table, and when you get to the table, it's my suggestion that you may want to take a few minutes to have a sidebar conversation amongst the 3 consumer groups and a sidebar conversation between the Midland president and the Midland council, so that the lawyer and the president talk for a minute before they sit down and work at cross purposes at the table. And where the TEFLEX the scientist goes is up to the TEFLEX scientist. Maybe nowhere, it just sits by him or herself, I don't know. But you might take that first 10 minutes or so before you come back. You'll have an hour overall when you come back to the table with all 6 of you to see what you can work out. How will this informal meeting respond to growing public concern about the availability of RenAid? There's a crisis here. How will these organizations, the 5 organizations, handle their conflicting interests? Will you be able to think of something you can do together? Will the consumer groups think of something they want to do, but the industry people won't respond? What will happen at the end of this hour in terms of what you would come out and say to the public, if anything, that the 6 of you agree upon? And how should scientific or factual matters be handled in the context of this public debate, to the extent that scientific or technical issues turn out to be important? Do you have an idea about that the 6 of you can agree upon? So you may get nowhere, the meeting may explode, or you might get somewhere and agree on something, or you may just agree to meet again. I don't know what's going to happen, and I assume different things will happen. And at the end of the hour, we'll break for lunch, and then when we come back from lunch, we'll debrief the whole group and see what the outcomes were and what we can learn from that. Okay? So the first thing that happens is you make sure you keep your confidential instructions confidential, right? There's no way in real life to go up to someone and say, you're right, but it says here on my paper I have to disagree with you, okay? So this is for you. It's not to show to the other side in order to convince them that you're right about what you're saying. Confidential means don't show it to the others. Take your confidential instructions with you, because someone else is going to be sitting at your table for a moment. Take 15 minutes, I'll ring a gong or something and then bring you back, and when you get back, then you may want to have these caucuses briefly, and then you're all face to face, and you'll have 60 minutes before we go to lunch to see what you can work out. Okay? You might want to think about the 6 principles that I talked about all morning. That's up to you. Get what you can out of this session. You have only a few more minutes together. Okay, it's time, folks, to send you back to your table with whatever strategy you've cooked up. And once you get to the table, you're in roll. You should be in roll when you arrive at the table. So don't be surprised if somebody accosts you in your roll. That's fine. I don't get to sit anyway.
That's right. Hold on.
Remember, you may want to have a caucus for a few minutes. Midland President, Midland Council may want to meet. Consumers may want to meet briefly before you start the meeting. Having done this game a lot of times and only giving them an hour to do the negotiation, if I don't tell them to do that and they just start out in the middle, it'll suddenly become clear the consumer groups need to get their act together. We're going to go off and caucus. And sometimes they'll caucus half an hour in, and then I can't get them to come back and finish the game in the time frame that we have available. Similarly, the president and the lawyer from Midland, if they sit down and they haven't talked together, it's utterly unrealistic that the president and the general counsel wouldn't have met beforehand. But often, if I don't say caucus, they don't. They sit there, and then they start arguing with each other in front of everybody else. And the general sense people have is, that wasn't very realistic. This game, I can't really learn anything from this game because it's not realistic. Whereas all I have to say is, take 15 minutes in caucus, and it's much more realistic, and then they feel that they can rely more on the learning that came out.
I'm Jeff Ansell from NEWS. Who here is the president of Midland Pharmaceuticals? Is it you, sir? Please stand up, sir. Why is your company killing people?
Well, we're not killing people at all.
Well, the fact is you're keeping this medication off the marketplace. Is it because of greed?
No, not at all. We're just trying to work this out to bring the best solution for our market and our companies involved.
Well, what's the problem? Why isn't this drug in the marketplace? Is this funny to you, sir?
No, it's not.
Please look at me. Why is this drug not available? What is the reason?
There are some issues concerning the production. There is a production that it has already been done, and it cannot be tested because it implies to destruct the whole batch. So we're working out to see what we can do in the best interest of all.
NEWS has learned that the batch of Teflex has been tampered with. When did you find out about this?
Today.
Oh, this is